Hey, dear members of the Soul Stories family, today we will bring you a romantic, funny, and love story, so let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any meaningful stories. Chapter 1. Luggage and Chaos. Mia Carter dragged her emerald green suitcase through the hotel lobby, her high heels clicking sharply against the polished marble floor. She had just endured an 11-hour flight from New York to Hawaii, and her mood, putting it mildly, was like a thundercloud ready to burst. 3 weeks ago, she had called off her engagement to Ethan, the man she once thought she'd build a home with. But it turned out Ethan preferred building a home with Taylor, Mia's college best friend, on the very bed Mia had picked out the sheets for their wedding day. She needed Hawaii, needed the white sandy beaches, the chilled Mai Tais, and most importantly, needed to forget the betrayal gnawing at every cell in her body. She had booked the most luxurious package at Paradise Cove Resort, a place whose ads promised to soothe every heartache. But right now, standing in the lobby, scented with frangipani and coconut, all she wanted was for someone to haul her heavy suitcase to her room so she could collapse onto the bed and sleep everything away. That's when she saw him. A man stood near the reception desk, phone in hand, wearing neon green floral shorts and a baggy white t-shirt. A pair of sunglasses perched lazily on his nose, revealing tousled brown hair that looked like it had just been whipped by the ocean breeze. He looked exactly like the typical resort slacker, the kind who came here to chug beers and flirt with anyone in a bikini. Mia muttered to herself, "Definitely the bellhop around here." She cleared her throat, stepped closer, and spoke in the commanding tone she often used when directing her interior design crew. "Hey, can you take this suitcase up to room 304 for me? I'm exhausted." The man looked up from his phone, his light brown eyes flashing with surprise before shifting to amusement. He smirked, a lazy, irritating half-smile. "I don't work here," he said, his voice deep and slightly hoarse, like he'd just woken up from a long nap. "But if you want, I can charge you. $5 per suitcase. How's that?" Mia blinked, thinking she'd misheard. She scanned him from head to toe. Shorts, flip-flops, cocky attitude, and irritation bubbled up like boiling water. "Very funny," she replied, her voice icy. "If you're not staff, then don't stand here blocking my way." "I was standing here before you showed up," he shrugged, slipping his phone into his pocket. "You're the one who bumped into me." She wanted to argue, but a real receptionist, neatly uniformed, appeared, cutting off their pointless exchange. Mia turned away, suppressing her annoyance to check in, but she could still feel the man's eyes on her, as if he were waiting for her to turn back and continue their verbal sparring. Chapter 2. Sea Breeze and Irritation. James J. Donovan didn't want to be here at all. He'd been practically forced onto the plane by Matt, his best friend and co-founder of their startup, after the company lost an 8-figure contract with a major tech conglomerate. "You need a break," Matt had said. "You look like you're about to lose it from overwork." Jay didn't deny it. He hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night for the past 3 months. But Hawaii cinema, a fancy resort, this wasn't his style. He'd rather be holed up in his office with a pile of code and black coffee than lounging on a beach listening to waves. But Matt had booked the tickets and the room, so Jay reluctantly hauled his suitcase to Paradise Cove Resort. He wore shorts and a t-shirt, not bothering to dress up, because to him this was just a pointless trip. While standing in the lobby to check in, he got bumped into by a woman, blonde hair tied high, sharp blue eyes, and an attitude like she owned the whole hotel. She even demanded he carry her suitcase, as if he were some clumsy porter. Jay couldn't help but laugh, and his retort, "I can charge you if you want," only made her angrier. That woman, with her mix of elegance and ferocity, was the only interesting thing he'd encountered since arriving. But he quickly pushed her out of his mind as he grabbed his room key and stepped onto the villa's balcony overlooking the ocean. The breeze carried the scent of salt and tropical flowers, but Jay just felt empty. He opened his laptop, about to check work emails, when his phone rang. "You there yet?" Matt's voice came through the line. "Yeah, but I still think this is the worst idea you've ever had," Jay replied, rubbing his temple. "Relax, Jay. Have a cocktail, flirt with some girls, act human for once." I'm not the cocktail or flirting type, Jay grumbled. He hung up, flopped onto the sofa, and tried not to think about the failed contract or the pile of waiting emails. But the image of the woman from the lobby crept into his mind. How she'd looked at him like he was useless, and the way she'd turned away without even responding to his last remark. Jay shook his head, telling himself, definitely the stuck-up type. Not worth the attention. Meanwhile, Mia had made it to room 304, or at least what she thought was her room. She opened the door, dragged her suitcase inside, and immediately sensed something was off. A laptop sat open on the table. A pair of flip-flops lay scattered by the door, and a faint whiff of men's cologne hung in the air. She frowned, stepping further in, then heard the sound of running water from the bathroom. Her heart pounded. This wasn't her room. Someone was already here. And when the bathroom door swung open, she froze as the neon green shorts guy from the lobby stepped out, hair wet and a towel draped around his neck. "What are you doing in my room?" Jay asked, his tone a mix of surprise and annoyance. "Your room?" Mia snapped, hands on her hips. "This is room 304. My room." "No, this is my room," Jay shot back, pointing to the key card on the table. "You got it wrong." They stared at each other, neither backing down, and the air in the villa suddenly felt as tight as a strung bow. Mia clenched her fists, feeling like this soul-soothing getaway was about to turn into a nightmare. Chapter 3. The Call and Bitter Truth. Mia Carter stood in the middle of the luxurious villa, her hand still gripping the keycard for room 304, her sharp gaze slicing into Jay Donovan, the man in neon green shorts she'd clashed with in the lobby. He stood across from her, holding an identical keycard, his deep voice laced with frustration. "This is my room. You've got it wrong." "No, this is my room," Mia snapped, raising her card like a challenge. "I booked it 3 weeks ago." Jay frowned, stepping over to the table and pointing at the open laptop and the scattered flip-flops by the door. "Then how did my stuff get here? You think I just wandered in for fun?" Mia didn't want to hear more. She turned, yanked out her phone, and dialed the front desk, her voice trembling with anger. "Hello, this is Mia Carter, room 304. There's a strange man in my room. I need a new one right now." Jay crossed his arms and leaned against the wall, his expression like he was watching a comedy unfold. He even smirked as she spoke, as if this were some entertaining joke. But that smirk faded fast when a soft, apologetic voice came through the line. "Ms. Carter, we're so sorry. There was a glitch in the booking system, and 304 was double booked. The resort is fully occupied due to a large conference. We'll fix it by morning, but tonight—" "Tonight what?" Mia cut in, her heart starting to race. "You and Mr. Donovan will have to share the villa." Mia nearly dropped the phone. She spun around to face Jay, who was now frowning too, clearly less thrilled about this than she'd assumed. "Are you kidding me?" she yelled into the phone. "I paid for a luxury vacation, not to bunk with some—" She glanced at Jay, who was rubbing his temple like he was staving off a headache. "Some guy who looks like he just escaped a public beach." "Thanks for the compliment," Jay replied, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "But I'm not thrilled to share with someone who thinks they own the world either." The receptionist kept apologizing, promising a free dinner and a resolution by morning. But that didn't change the reality. Mia and Jay were stuck together for the night. She hung up, tossed the phone onto the sofa, and turned to him. "I'm taking the bedroom. You stay out here." "Fine by me," Jay said, plopping onto the sofa. "But don't expect me to be quiet all night." And he wasn't kidding. Minutes later, loud EDM blared from a Bluetooth speaker, making Mia storm out of the bedroom, hands on her hips. "Can you turn that off? I need peace." "It's a vacation," Jay shot back, tapping the table to the beat. "I ordered wine. Want some?" Mia gritted her teeth. She didn't want wine. She wanted sleep. But before she could protest, the doorbell rang, and a staff member delivered a tray of food, grilled lobster and garlic butter scallops, that Jay had ordered without asking her. The rich seafood aroma filled the air, but Mia's face flushed hot. "I'm allergic to seafood," she said, her voice icy. "Didn't think to ask first, huh? How was I supposed to know?" Jay shrugged, though his eyes flickered with a hint of unease. "I thought everyone liked lobster." Mia turned away, unwilling to keep arguing. She needed space, and if she couldn't escape him, she'd have to survive this night somehow. Chapter 4. The Window and Awkwardness. Mia decided to take a shower to wash away her frustration. She dragged her suitcase into the bedroom, locked the door, and headed to the closet for her sleepwear. The villa's open design featured a large glass window connecting the bedroom and living area, a detail she now cursed in her head. A flimsy curtain hung loosely beside it, but she didn't notice, assuming Jay was busy with his laptop and wine in the living room. She stripped down to her plain black underwear and was reaching for an oversized t-shirt when she heard footsteps in the living room. Mia turned just as Jay walked past the glass window, wine glass in hand. His eyes accidentally swept over her, and he froze, nearly dropping the glass. Mia screamed, lunging for the towel on the bed and wrapping it around herself in a flash. Her face burned red, her heart pounding with embarrassment and fury. She flung open the bedroom door and stormed out to confront Jay, who was now blushing too, hands raised as if to explain. "You pervert," Mia shouted, pointing at his face. "You looked on purpose, didn't you?" "I didn't mean to," Jay replied, his voice higher than usual, clearly flustered. "Why didn't you close the curtain? Who changes in front of a window?" "This is my room," Mia roared. "You're not allowed to look." "I didn't want to look," Jay fired back, though his eyes darted away, as if he couldn't unsee what had happened. The air between them was taut, laced with an awkwardness neither could hide. Mia took a deep breath, stormed back into the bedroom, and slammed the door. But she could still hear Jay muttering outside, "God, this vacation." After a few minutes of silence, Jay knocked, softly, almost reluctantly. "Hey," he said through the crack. "I'm sorry, I really didn't mean it. Are you okay?" "I'd be fine if you disappeared," Mia shot back, her tone still sharp, though she knew he couldn't go anywhere. Eventually, they reached a temporary truce. Mia grabbed a roll of tape from her suitcase, an interior designer's habit, and drew a boundary line down the middle of the villa, left side hers, right side his. "No one crosses this line," she declared, wielding the tape like a weapon. "Fine," Jay replied, shrugging, "but if you want wine, feel free to come grab some." Mia glared at him, saying nothing, but inside she was a mess. The embarrassment from the window incident still haunted her, and though she hated to admit it, the fleeting look of flustered sincerity in Jay's eyes when he apologized made her feel strange. Jay sank onto the sofa, wine glass in hand, trying to focus on his laptop. But he couldn't erase the image of Mia in her underwear, not because he meant to linger on it, but because it had been so sudden, so real. He shook his head, telling himself to forget it, but the stifling atmosphere in the villa had shifted, even if neither of them dared to acknowledge it. Chapter 5. Long Night and Noise. Mia Carter lay on the king-size bed in the villa's bedroom, eyes squeezed shut, trying to sink into sleep and forget this awful day. But the steady clacking of keys from the living room, mixed with the faint glow of Jay's laptop screen, buzzed around her like an unrelenting fly. The tape line she'd drawn down the middle of the villa, her side on the left, his on the right, did nothing to block the noise or his presence. It was nearly midnight, and she needed sleep. Tomorrow the hotel promised to fix the booking mix-up, and she'd escape this little hell. But Jay Donovan showed no signs of resting. He sat on the sofa, long legs propped on the table, eyes glued to his laptop as if he were saving the world through a pile of code. Mia muttered to herself, "Can't he work somewhere that isn't here?" She shot up, threw a thin robe over herself, and marched out of the bedroom, hands on hips. "Can you stop typing? It's midnight." Jay looked up, his light brown eyes flashing with irritation but retaining that familiar, cocky smirk. "I'm working," he replied, his voice low and curt. "If you don't like it, wear earplugs." "I didn't bring earplugs," Mia snapped, "and this is a vacation, not your tech office." "To me, it's no different," Jay shrugged, fingers still tapping away. "You should get used to it if you're staying here." Mia clenched her teeth. She wanted to storm across the boundary line, snatch his laptop, and hurl it off the balcony. Instead, she took a deep breath, spun around, and slammed the bedroom door, hoping the noise would make him flinch. It didn't work. The typing continued, now joined by Jay's muttering as he spoke through a Bluetooth earpiece, probably to some colleague in a different time zone. She flopped back onto the bed, pulling the blanket over her head, but her frustration had hit its limit. Mia sprang up again, charging into the living room with a resolve to end this. "That's enough," she yelled, yanking the plug of the Bluetooth speaker Jay had left on the table. "Don't you have any respect for others?" "You just cut off my call," Jay said, his voice icy, hands pausing mid-type. He pulled off his earpiece and stood and crossed the boundary line, the first time since they'd drawn it. "Do you have any idea what I was handling?" "I don't care," Mia shouted, pointing at his face. "I need sleep and you're ruining everything." Jay stared at her, his gaze darkening. He stepped closer, towering over her by a full head, and the air grew stifling. Mia didn't back down, though her heart pounded harder from the tension. Chapter 6. Wine and Consequences. On the table beside the sofa, the half-finished glass of wine Jay had been drinking sat there, deep red and glinting under the light. Mia, in her fury, swung her arm to gesture again, but her hand accidentally knocked the glass. It unfolded like a slow-motion scene. The glass tipped, spilling straight onto Jay's open laptop, the red liquid seeping into the keyboard and screen before he could react. "What did you just do?" Jay yelled, lunging to the table and snatching up the laptop, but it was too late. The screen flickered a few times before going black, leaving only the sound of wine dripping onto the floor. I didn't mean to," Mia stammered, eyes wide with shock, but her panic quickly gave way to anger as Jay turned to her, his face flushed with rage. "Didn't mean to," Jay growled, gripping the edge of the table. "Do you know how important the data on this was? Months of work." "Well, you didn't mean to keep me awake either," Mia shot back, though her voice wavered slightly. "Don't blame me when you started it." Jay stepped forward, grabbing her wrist, not hard but firm enough to hold her still. He leaned down, his face inches from hers, his warm breath brushing her cheek. "You need to learn some self-control," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "because I'm not the type you can push around." Mia jerked her hand free, but Jay's reflexes were faster than she expected. She misunderstood, thinking he was about to attack her, and instinctively, her hand flew up, slapping him hard across the cheek. The sharp crack echoed in the quiet space, stunning them both. Jay touched his face, eyes widening, but instead of exploding as she expected, he smirked, a challenging, unreadable grin. Before Mia could react, he pulled her back, his hand gripping her waist, and then his lips crashed onto hers, a fierce, sudden, defiant kiss. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't romantic, it felt like a declaration of war, a way for him to reclaim control after the slap. Mia tasted the wine on his lips, his ragged breath mingling with her own racing pulse. She froze, neither pushing him away nor responding, just standing there like a statue. Then Jay released her, stepping back, his eyes as bewildered as hers. "That's so you know," he said, his voice hoarse. "I'm not someone you can toy with." Mia couldn't speak. She turned, bolted to the bedroom, and slammed the door, her heart pounding like it might burst from her chest. Chapter 7. Aftermath and Confusion. Mia collapsed onto the bed, hands covering her face, trying to make sense of what had just happened. That kiss, it wasn't like anything she'd ever experienced. Not the sweetness of Ethan in the early days, not the tenderness she'd once dreamed of in a perfect romance. It was rough, unexpected, and impossible to stop thinking about. She hated Jay, hated his arrogant attitude, hated how he'd turned her vacation into a nightmare. But why did her whole body feel like it was on fire? Why couldn't she erase the image of his eyes, half angry, half confused, from her mind? Outside, Jay sank onto the sofa, rubbing the faint red mark on his cheek where Mia's slap had landed. He didn't understand what he'd just done. He'd pulled her back to talk, to make her stop yelling and face the consequences of spilling wine on his laptop. But that slap and the kiss that followed were things he hadn't anticipated. Jay wasn't impulsive. He was a CEO, a man who controlled everything, from code to emotions. But with Mia, everything spiraled out of his grasp. He took a sip of the leftover wine from the bottle, trying to focus on salvaging data from his laptop, but his mind kept drifting back to the moment her lips met his. Soft, surprising, and magnetic. In the bedroom, Mia pulled the blanket over her head, but sleep wouldn't come. She told herself to forget it, that it was just a stupid move by an arrogant jerk. But every time she closed her eyes, she felt his breath again, the strength in his grip as he pulled her close. She muttered, "I've lost my mind." Neither of them slept that night. The villa was silent, but the air between them had shifted forever, a new tension, an attraction neither dared to acknowledge. Chapter 8. Bad News and Compromise. Mia Carter stood at the front desk of Paradise Cove Resort, clutching the key card for room 304, hoping the new day would bring good news. Last night, after the slap and the unexpected kiss with Jay Donovan, she'd barely slept. Partly from anger, partly from a confusion she didn't want to admit. She'd counted the minutes until morning, desperate to switch rooms and escape him. But when the young receptionist, with a forced smile, spoke, all her hopes crumbled. "Ms. Carter, we're so sorry," the employee said, her voice soft as if bracing for a scolding. "The booking issue hasn't been resolved. The conference has been extended by 2 days, and there are no available rooms. You and Mr. Donovan will have to share the villa longer than expected." "Longer?" Mia nearly shouted, drawing glances from nearby guests. "You mean I'm stuck with that guy for 2 more days?" "We'll compensate you with free services," the employee hurried to add. "But for now, it's the only solution." Mia marched back to the villa, dragging her suitcase with the air of someone declaring war. Jay was on the sofa, a new laptop, borrowed from the front desk after she'd ruined his, balanced on his lap. He looked up as the door opened, smirking with that infuriatingly familiar amusement. "Bad news?" he asked, his low voice dripping with sarcasm. "We're stuck together for 2 more days," Mia replied, tossing her suitcase into the bedroom corner. "And don't think I'm happy about it." "Neither am I," Jay said, though his eyes briefly flicked over her, as if recalling last night's kiss. "But if you're planning to slap me again, at least give me a heads up so I can brace myself." Mia flushed and turned away so he wouldn't see. She didn't want to revisit it, the slap, the kiss, or the strange feeling it left behind. Instead, she declared, "We need rules. No loud music after 10 p.m., no ordering seafood, and absolutely no crossing the boundary line unless necessary." "Fine," Jay shrugged, "but if you want wine, I'm not sharing for free." They coexisted reluctantly, maintaining distance with the tape line splitting the villa. But that day, a sign in the resort lobby forced them to stop avoiding each other. A mandatory team-building activity for guests, tandem kayaking, meant to enhance the vacation experience. Mia wanted to refuse, but the staff insisted it was part of the compensation for the booking error. On the beach, Mia and Jay were paired up, each gripping a paddle, seated in a small yellow kayak, wobbling on the clear blue water. "Paddle evenly," Mia ordered, her voice tight as the kayak tipped left. "I am paddling," Jay replied, irritation clear. "Stop shoving all your weight to one side." They bickered for 10 minutes, the kayak spinning in circles instead of moving forward, while other pairs glided past them effortlessly. But somehow they found a rhythm. Jay paddling harder on the right, Mia sinking her strokes on the left. When the kayak finally coasted to the finish line, both were panting, locking eyes, and unexpectedly, bursting into laughter, the first time since they'd met. "Not bad," Jay said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Guess you got lucky," Mia replied, but the corner of her mouth twitched upward. Chapter 9. Cramp and Rescue. On their second day of sharing the villa, Mia decided to swim in the resort's infinity pool to relieve some stress. She slipped into an emerald green bikini and glided into the cool water, trying to forget Jay's presence back at the villa. But halfway through her swim, a sudden cramp seized her right leg, locking it in a painful spasm. Startled, Mia flailed in the water, her hands thrashing to keep herself afloat. "Help!" she shouted, her voice breaking with panic. Jay, who'd been sitting on a lounge chair near the pool with his laptop, looked up instantly. He tossed the device aside and dove in without hesitation. Within seconds, his arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her above the surface. "Calm down," he said, his voice low but steady. "I've got you." Mia gasped for air, clinging to his shoulders, feeling the strength in his movements as he swam them toward the pool's edge. He lifted her onto a chair, then knelt to check her leg. "Cramp?" Jay asked, gently massaging her calf. Yeah, Mia replied, her voice quiet from embarrassment. Thanks. Jay said nothing, just kept kneading her muscle until the pain eased. His eyes softened briefly, a look she hadn't seen before, and she suddenly noticed he was shirtless, wearing only tight black swim trunks. His body was toned and sun-kissed, far from the slacker image she'd pinned on him. Mia turned her face away, hiding her flustered reaction. You should be more careful, Jay said, standing and wiping his hands on a towel. I won't always be here to save you. I don't need you to save me, Mia retorted, but her usual sharpness was missing. Jay smirked but didn't reply, though his gaze lingered on her longer than usual before he returned to his chair. Mia sat there, her legs still aching faintly, but what unsettled her more was the lingering warmth of his touch on her skin. Chapter 10. Drunk and Confessions. That night, the resort hosted a beach party, another compensation for the booking mix-up. Despite their reluctance, Mia and Jay were swept into the lively atmosphere, twinkling lanterns, gentle Hawaiian music, and an endless flow of cocktails. Mia finished her third Mai Tai, the buzz slowly replacing her tension. Jay, nursing a beer beside her, had been watching her all evening, but stayed mostly quiet. You're drinking a lot, he finally said, his tone half teasing, half concerned. I need to relax, Mia replied, leaning back in her chair, eyes half closed. You should try it. Might make you less grumpy. Jay snorted but didn't argue. When the music shifted to a slower tune, Mia stood, swaying slightly, and grabbed his hand. Dance! Stop being a bystander. I don't dance, Jay said, but she'd already pulled him onto the sand before he could refuse. They danced, or rather stumbled together, under the soft glow of the lanterns. Mia rested her head on his shoulder, her warm breath grazing his neck. She whispered, her voice slurred with drink. You're not as bad as I thought. Jay stiffened, his hand tightening briefly on her waist. He looked down, meeting her dreamy but sincere blue eyes, and his heart beat faster than usual. You're drunk, he said, his voice rough, but he didn't push her away. They returned to the villa when the party ended, Mia leaning on his shoulder for balance. As she flopped onto the sofa, crossing the boundary line for the first time, Jay helped her lie down, pulling a blanket over her. He sat there watching her sleep, her blonde hair spilling over the pillow, and realized something he didn't want to face. He liked her stubbornness, liked how she challenged him, liked the way she made him lose control, but he couldn't admit it. Not now, with his past and reason holding him back. Jay stood, turning to his laptop, but his eyes kept drifting to her, unable to pull away. Chapter 11. The Photo in the Night. Mia Carter sat on the sofa in the villa, holding a glass of orange juice, her eyes still hazy from last night's party. She had crossed the tape boundary to sleep there, something she couldn't have imagined just days ago. Jay Donovan, the man who once drove her up the wall, was now out on the balcony, hunched over his laptop with his usual focus. After days of reluctant coexistence, from tandem kayaking to the moment he saved her from a cramp, to her drunken confession last night, you're not as bad as I thought. Things between them had shifted. It wasn't hostility anymore, but something vague, hard to define. Yet this morning, as the Hawaiian sunlight streamed through the window, an uneasy feeling crept into her chest. There was something about Jay she couldn't pin down, his gaze sometimes distant, like he was hiding a secret. She shook her head, telling herself it was just her imagination, and stood to head to the bedroom to change. That's when she saw it. On the table beside Jay's laptop lay an old leather wallet he'd forgotten after paying for breakfast. It was slightly open, a corner of a small photo peeking out. Mia hadn't meant to pry, but her blue eyes caught it, and she froze. The faded photo, its edges yellowed, showed two people, a younger Jay with a rare smile and a blonde girl beside him. That face was too familiar. Jessica Carter, Mia's older sister. Her heart pounded. She picked up the photo, hands trembling, and looked closer. Jessica, with the radiant smile Mia remembered from their closer days, had her arm around Jay in some park. In the corner, faint handwriting read, Jay and Jess, Summer 2018. Mia felt the blood drain from her face, Jay was Jessica's ex, the man her sister had once loved passionately, then dumped for a wealthier businessman. Jessica had told that story 100 times, with the smugness of a victor, but never mentioned his real name. Just the broke programmer she'd left behind. And now that programmer was here, sharing a villa with her. The balcony door slid open, and Jay stepped inside, stopping short when he saw Mia holding the photo. His face paled, but only for a second before he regained his composure. "What are you doing with my stuff?" he asked, his voice low but tense. "What is this?" Mia held up the photo, her voice shaking with anger and confusion. "You knew Jessica? My sister?" Jay stayed silent, his eyes flicking to the photo, then back to her. He didn't deny it, just stepped forward slowly, hands in his pockets as if trying to stay calm. "Yeah," he said finally, "I used to date Jessica." Mia let out a bitter laugh, but it caught in her throat. "Used to date? You mean you're the ex she ditched for someone richer? And now you're here, with me?" Jay frowned, opening his mouth to speak, but Mia didn't give him the chance. She threw the photo onto the table and stepped up to face him. "You knew who I was from the start, didn't you? You knew I was Jessica's sister." Chapter 12, Admission and Confrontation. Jay met her gaze head-on, unflinching, and nodded slowly. "Yes," he said, his voice low but firm. "I knew you were Jessica's sister the moment I saw you in the lobby. Your name, your voice, they're just like hers." "Then why didn't you say anything?" Mia shouted, fists clenched. "Why did you let me stay here, live with you, like this was all some coincidence?" "Because it didn't matter," Jay replied, his voice rising with frustration. "I didn't come here for you, Mia. I came here to rest, not to track down my ex's little sister. Us sharing the villa was the hotel's mistake, not my plan." Mia stepped back, her mind reeling. She replayed every moment, the slap, the kiss, their laughter on the kayak, him pulling her from the pool. Now it was all tainted with doubt. "You expect me to believe that?" she snapped. "That you weren't trying to get back at Jessica through me? That everything you did, pretending to care, saving me, staying close, wasn't some game?" "I'm not playing games," Jay shot back, stepping closer. "Jessica's the past. I don't care about her anymore, and I'm sure as hell not using you for revenge. If I wanted payback, I'd have done it years ago. I wouldn't wait for Hawaii." But Mia wasn't listening. She felt betrayed, not just by Jay, but by herself. She'd let him get close, let herself feel something for him, without knowing this truth. She shook her head, tears welling up but held back. "You're lying," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You knew her history with you, and you still let me believe this was real. You used me." "Mia, I didn't—" Jay reached for her, but she jerked away. "Don't touch me," she yelled, her eyes full of pain. "I don't even know who you are anymore." Jay stood there, hands falling limp, his gaze darkening. He wanted to explain, to tell her he hadn't come here for Jessica, that their moments together were real, but he knew she wouldn't believe him, not now when everything had just shattered. Mia turned and stormed into the bedroom, slamming the door. She sank onto the bed, burying her face in her hands, feeling like her heart was being torn apart. She started to like him. How stupid. And now she only saw herself as a pawn in his game with the past. Chapter 13, Decision and Departure. Mia didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind a tangle of memories about Jessica and the past few days with Jay. Her sister had spoken of the broke programmer with disdain, saying he wasn't good enough, that she deserved someone wealthier. Mia had never met Jay before. Jessica never kept photos or said his name. But now she realized he wasn't that broke guy anymore. He was a startup CEO, a successful man, and maybe someone out for revenge. The next morning she rose before sunrise, quietly packing her suitcase. She couldn't stay here another minute. Not with Jay, not with the doubt eating at her. As she dragged her suitcase into the living room, Jay was on the sofa, eyes bloodshot like he hadn't slept, holding an empty beer bottle. He looked up at the sound of her footsteps, a flicker of panic in his eyes. "Where are you going?" he asked, standing. "I'm leaving Hawaii," Mia replied, her voice cold. "I can't stay here with you." "Mia, listen to me." Jay stepped forward, but she held up a hand to stop him. "Don't," she cut in. You knew the truth from the start and didn't tell me. I can't trust you anymore." Jay clenched his fists, as if wrestling with himself. "I didn't say anything because I didn't want the past to interfere. I like you, Mia. Not because of Jessica, but because you're you." Mia paused, her heart aching at his words. Part of her wanted to believe that the kiss, the closeness, was real, but the rational part screamed she couldn't take the risk. "If you really liked me," she said, her voice trembling, "you wouldn't have hidden this from me." She pulled her suitcase to the door, not looking back, though she heard Jay call her name. As the villa door shut behind her, she took a deep breath, tears finally spilling over. She booked the earliest flight back to New York, determined to forget Hawaii, forget Jay, and forget the pain tearing her apart. Chapter 14. Departure and Emptiness. Mia Carter dragged her suitcase through the Hawaii airport lobby, her eyes red, but her chin held high, determined not to let Jay Donovan see her weakness. He had chased her to the villa's door, his voice hoarse as he called out, "Mia, wait! Let me explain!" But she didn't stop. She couldn't. His admission that he'd known she was Jessica's sister from the start echoed in her mind, cutting into the fragile trust she'd begun to build. She'd let him get close, laughed with him, felt his warmth as they danced under the lanterns. And now it all felt like a cruel joke. "I don't want to hear it," she interrupted as he tried to grab her hand. "You had your chance to be honest, and you didn't take it." Jay stood there, hands falling to his sides, his eyes full of helplessness. "Mia, I didn't come here for Jessica. I came here because—" "Don't," she cut him off, her voice trembling. "I don't trust you anymore." She turned away, stepped into the taxi, and as it pulled away, she didn't look back. But inside, she felt an emptiness she couldn't explain, a loss that went beyond her anger. The plane took off, carrying her back to New York, where she hoped to forget Hawaii, forget Jay, and forget the kiss that had changed everything. Jay returned to the villa, shutting the door and collapsing onto the sofa. He picked up the empty beer bottle from last night, staring at the tape boundary line, now vacant on Mia's side. He tried to explain that he wasn't out for revenge, that he genuinely liked her, but she hadn't given him a chance. He told himself it was for the best. She didn't trust him, and maybe she was right. His past with Jessica was a scar he couldn't erase, and dragging Mia into it only made things worse. But when he closed his eyes, her image, blonde hair spilling over the sofa, blue eyes dreamy with drunkenness, wouldn't leave. He muttered, "I'm such an idiot." Chapter 15. Safe Choices and Lingering Regrets. A month had passed since Mia returned to New York. She threw herself into her work at the interior design firm, trying to fill the void with blueprints, meetings, and late nights at her computer. But every time sunlight streamed through the window, she'd think of Hawaii's beaches, the sound of waves, and, though she hated to admit it, Jay. One afternoon, as she tweaked a design for a major client, Mark Thompson knocked on her office door. Mark, her longtime colleague with neat brown hair and a warm smile, had always been her rock during tough times. He'd liked her. She'd known it from the looks he gave her even when she was engaged to Ethan, but she'd never reciprocated. "You okay?" Mark asked, setting a coffee cup on her desk. "You've seemed tired since Hawaii." "Fine," Mia replied, forcing a smile. "Just busy." Mark sat across from her, his gaze earnest with concern. "Mia, I know you've been through a lot, with Ethan, then that trip. I just want you to know, I'm here, and I've always liked you." Mia looked up, caught off guard. Before she could respond, Mark took her hand, his voice shaky but resolute. "I want to be with you, Mia, not just as a co-worker, but more. I want to propose a stable life, a family, everything you deserve." Mia pulled her hand back, her heart racing. Mark was safety, a good, reliable man with no secrets or tangled past. He was the choice her rational mind screamed she should take, especially after the wreckage of Ethan and Jay. But as she met his eyes, she felt nothing. No spark, no thrill like the one she'd felt standing close to Jay, even for a fleeting moment. "Mark, I need time," she said, her voice softening. "I don't know what I want right now." "I'll wait," Mark replied, standing with a sad smile. "But don't take too long, okay?" That night, Mia lay in bed, wrestling with herself. Mark was the easy way out, a life free of drama and pain. But Jay, he was risk, raw emotion she couldn't control. She wondered, was she rejecting real happiness out of fear? Or was she just clinging to a Hawaiian illusion? Chapter 16. Words on TV and Awakening. One Friday evening, Mia sat on her small New York apartment sofa, flipping through TV channels with the remote, barely paying attention. She paused on an entrepreneur interview show where the host chatted with a familiar face, James J. Donovan, CEO of a San Francisco tech startup. She moved to turn it off, but her finger hesitated. Jay looked different on screen. Crisp black suit, hair neatly combed, no trace of the carefree guy in neon green shorts she'd met in Hawaii. Yet his light brown eyes were the same, deep, thoughtful. The host asked about his success, but the final question made Mia sit up straight. Mr. Donovan, with all you've achieved, is there anything you regret? Jay paused, his gaze drifting past the camera, as if looking right at her. Then he spoke, his voice low and sincere. Yes, sometimes you meet someone who makes you want to stay, but you let them go out of fear. I did that once, and I'm not sure if I'll get the chance to fix it. Mia's breath caught. Those words, they weren't generic. They were about her. She knew it, deep down. She rewound the interview, replaying every word, and this time, tears streamed down her cheeks. She remembered every moment with Jay, the slap, the kiss, him pulling her from the pool, the way he looked at her when she was drunk. He wasn't avenging Jessica through her. He genuinely liked her, maybe even loved her, and she'd walked away because she couldn't trust him. The next morning, Mia met Mark at a cafe. He brought a small ring, his eyes brimming with hope. But she shook her head, her voice gentle yet firm. Mark, you're wonderful, but I can't. My heart, it's not here. Mark nodded, sad but unsurprised. I figured. Be happy, Mia. She left the cafe, her pulse racing with newfound resolve. She couldn't let fear hold her back anymore. She had to find Jay, to tell him she was wrong, that she felt something real between them too. She booked a flight to San Francisco, unsure if he'd forgive her, but she had to try. Chapter 17. Journey to San Francisco. Mia Carter sat on the plane from New York to San Francisco, gripping the seatbelt, her eyes fixed on the window as white clouds drifted by. Her heart pounded, not from the altitude but from the decision she'd made, one she couldn't have fathomed weeks ago. After seeing Jay's interview, hearing him talk about letting someone go out of fear, she'd turned down Mark's proposal and booked the flight immediately. She was done running. She had to find Jay, to tell him she'd been wrong to doubt him, that she felt something real between them, untarnished by the past. She didn't know how he'd react. Would he forgive her for leaving without hearing him out? Would he still want her after everything? But she couldn't live with what-ifs anymore. The plane touched down at San Francisco International, and Mia stepped out, pulling her small suitcase, breathing in the crisp Bay Area air. She hailed a taxi, reciting the address of Jay's startup office she'd found in an online article. When the taxi stopped in front of a sleek glass building, Mia stepped into the lobby, palms sweaty. She approached the reception desk, forcing her voice to stay steady. I need to see James Donovan. I'm Mia Carter. The receptionist smiled, typed something into her computer, then looked up with surprise. Ms. Carter? Mr. Donovan isn't here. He flew to New York this morning. New York? Mia echoed, her mind spinning. What for? I'm not sure, the girl replied, shrugging, but his assistant might know. Can you wait a moment? Jay's assistant, a young woman named Sarah, appeared minutes later. She eyed Mia curiously before speaking. You're Mia? Jay's mentioned you. He flew to New York to find you. He left this morning, said it was something urgent he had to settle. Mia froze, a mix of shock and relief washing over her. Jay was looking for her, just as she'd come here for him. She laughed, a sound tinged with disbelief and lightness. Where is he now? She asked, her voice urgent. Probably at JFK, Sarah replied. His flight landed about an hour ago. Mia didn't wait. She spun around, hailed another taxi, and raced back to the airport. She booked the earliest flight back to New York, her heart pounding with the slim hope she could still catch him. Chapter 18. The Airport and Reunion. Jay Donovan stepped through the security checkpoint at JFK Airport in New York, pulling his carry-on suitcase behind him, his eyes scanning the crowd. He'd come straight here after landing, without telling anyone, driven by a single purpose: to find Mia. A month apart had made him realize he couldn't let her go like this. He'd been wrong not to clarify the truth about Jessica from the start, but he hadn't come to Hawaii for revenge. He'd come and stayed for her. He'd called her a few times from San Francisco, but she didn't answer. Maybe she'd blocked his number. He didn't blame her. But when he said on that TV interview that he regretted letting someone go out of fear, he'd hoped she'd hear it, that she'd understand. Now he was here, ready to face her, even if she rejected him again. Jay checked his phone. His return flight to San Francisco was nearing boarding time. He'd planned to go to her Manhattan apartment, but time was running out. He had an investor meeting tomorrow. He sighed, dragging his suitcase toward the gate, his heart heavy. Maybe this was truly the end. Across the airport, Mia burst out of a taxi, racing through the throng of passengers with her suitcase rattling behind her. She'd just landed from San Francisco, and there were only minutes left before Jay's flight took off. She'd called Sarah from the plane, learning his flight number, and now she sprinted with all she had, her eyes darting around the boarding gates. She spotted him. Jay, near the check-in counter, dressed in a black coat, his face tired but still strikingly handsome. He was turning away, about to board. Mia shouted, heedless of the hundreds of eyes turning toward her. "Jay!" He froze, then turned, his eyes widening in shock as he saw her. Mia ran to him, throwing herself into his arms before he could react, hugging him tightly. "Don't go," she said, her voice choked with tears streaming down her cheeks. "I was stupid to think you were with me because of the past. I was wrong, Jay. I'm sorry." Jay stood still for a moment, then his arms tightened around her, pulling her close to his chest. He leaned down, whispering into her ear. "I was wrong too. I should have been clear from the start. I came here because I can't lose you again." Chapter 19. The Kiss and the Crowd. Mia looked up into Jay's eyes, and for the first time since meeting him, she saw no doubt or fear, only sincerity and something deeper she wasn't ready to name. She smiled, placing a hand on his cheek. "You flew to New York to find me?" "And you flew to San Francisco to find me," Jay replied, a rare smile breaking across his face. "Looks like we're both terrible at keeping each other around." She laughed, a sound of relief and joy. Then before she could say more, Jay pulled her in, his hand cradling the back of her neck, and kissed her. A deep, intense kiss. Nothing like the defiant one in Hawaii. This time it was a fusion of pent-up emotion, forgiveness, and an unspoken promise. Around them, hundreds of passengers at JFK paused. Some clapped, some whistled. But Mia and Jay didn't care. The world shrank to just the two of them. And in that moment, the past, Jessica, the misunderstandings, the pain, melted away. When their lips parted, Mia rested her forehead against his chest, hearing his heartbeat race as fast as hers. "What now?" she asked, her voice soft. "Now we don't leave each other again," Jay answered, stroking her hair. "I don't care about San Francisco or New York. I just want to be with you." Chapter 20. Starting over. Mia and Jay left the airport hand in hand, their suitcases rolling behind them. They didn't head back to San Francisco or stay in New York right away. Instead, they chose to spend a few days at a small nearby hotel to talk, to understand each other, and to start anew without boundaries or secrets between them. In the hotel room, as the sunset glowed through the window, Mia sat on a chair, watching Jay unpack his suitcase and pull out a familiar t-shirt, the one he'd worn in Hawaii, faintly scented with the sea. She smiled. "You kept that shirt?" "It reminds me of you," Jay said, sitting beside her, "of the day we met and argued over a suitcase." Mia leaned into his shoulder, feeling his warmth spread through her. "I thought you were some slacker playboy." "And I thought you were a haughty queen," Jay replied, pressing a light kiss to her forehead. "Turns out we were both wrong." They laughed, and in that moment, everything became clear. The past with Jessica, the hurts and misunderstandings, no longer mattered. They were together now, not by fate or coincidence, but because they'd chosen each other, despite everything. One year after their reunion at JFK Airport, Mia Carter and Jay Donovan stood hand in hand on the beach at Paradise Cove Resort in Hawaii, the very place where they first met amid chaos and misunderstandings. The fine white sand stretched out beneath the sunset, waves lapping gently like a natural soundtrack to their wedding. Mia wore a simple white dress, her blonde hair flowing freely in the sea breeze, while Jay donned a light gray suit, his light brown eyes glowing with a happiness he hadn't imagined possible a year ago. The guest list was small, just a handful of close friends and family, but enough to create a warm, intimate ceremony. Matt, Jay's best friend, and the one who'd forced him to come to Hawaii in the first place, stood as best man, beaming brightly. Sarah, Jay's assistant, was there too, clapping as they exchanged vows. Jessica wasn't invited. Mia and Jay had agreed that the past should stay behind them, with no need for her sister's presence to overshadow this special day. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, Jay leaned down to kiss Mia, a tender yet firm kiss, a testament to the journey they'd overcome together. Applause erupted, mingling with the sound of the waves, and Mia whispered in his ear, "I never thought we'd end up here after everything." "Neither did I," Jay replied, squeezing her hand. "But I know this is where we belong." After the ceremony, they sat on the beach, barefoot in the sand, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Mia rested her head on Jay's shoulder, and together they recalled those early days, arguments, misunderstandings, and the slow discovery of each other amid old wounds. Mia and Jay's journey proved that love doesn't always start perfectly or easily. They met in chaos, separated by past baggage and doubts, but ultimately it was honesty, the courage to face their mistakes, and an unwavering resolve not to give up that brought them together. Thank you for following this heartfelt story of Soul Stories channel. Share your thoughts about the story in the comments below. If you believe that true love can withstand all trials and sometimes begins in the simplest of ways, don't forget to hit the like button and share this story with your friends. To never miss out on touching and meaningful stories, subscribe to our channel and help us spread messages of love and warmth to everyone. Let's cherish the beautiful moments of life and love together.